Welcome to Delicious and Nutritious, where we cook the tastiest food using the best quality ingredients. Today we are going to be making no-bake energy ball bites. This is absolutely a fantastic recipe. It's super simple, no bake once again, really good and thorough. So I'm excited about this one. I'm going to have two recipes pinned in the comments below because there's gonna be two variants. Number one, there's gonna be the almond butter variant, or number two, it's gonna be basically either using walnuts or cashews. So like I said last time in one of my other videos when I was talking about sprouted nuts, if you guys do want to see that video, please check it out up here. Sprouting your nuts basically means that you soak them in water for approximately 8+ hours, and then you are going to dehydrate them on the lowest possible setting in your oven as possible. So that is going to be what I would suggest for this recipe if you're using this, but if you're using the almond butter, we can do that as well. So let's get right into the ingredients right now so we can start making these delicious bites. My aunt was not a fan of coconut because an option for this, you can use coconut flakes. And this recipe, literally, she was in the garage because we had them stored. It was wintertime in New Jersey. Getting the energy bites and eating them because they were so delicious to her. So let's get right into the recipe. So what we're gonna need is we are going to need a cup of walnuts or cashews. I would say preferably sprouted, especially if you like walnuts, but you don't really like that aftertaste of like that chalky flavor from the actual walnut. And then it calls for 3/4 cups of shredded coconut flakes. So as far as that goes, number one, I would make sure you get unsweetened. I'm not a big fan of the low calorie ones either, but if you do want that, you can. In my podcast, we did talk about how calories don't make you fat necessarily. It's the quality of calorie that actually makes you overweight, or you can use rolled oats. Organic is a must. And then preferably it's gonna say gluten-free as well if you are sensitive to gluten. My preferable brand of this, which I don't have available to me out here, is going to be called 1 Degree. They sprout theirs and they're gluten-free. It's an absolutely amazing company. 1 Degree is gonna be the brand that I do recommend. I always confuse it with One Direction, so I'm like, yeah, it's One Direction. It's actually 1 Degree is the brand of the sprouted oats, if you have that available to you. If not, please check for it online. It's totally worth it. And then we're gonna be using dates as well. So it's calling for a cup of dates. Preferably it's gonna be organic, number one. Number two, it's gonna be medjool dates. They do have a higher mineral content as we do talk about. And then we're gonna need a tablespoon of coconut oil. Do remember that it's gonna need to be liquid. So I have already put mine into the oven prematurely, very easily, or you can just scoop this out and put it in there, but I just put this in the oven for a very short period of time, and then I let it go just a little bit liquid. It really doesn't take that much of a temperature increase. And then we have sea salt. So the base requirement for me is gonna be sea salt. If you wanna step it up a notch, as always, we talk about pink Himalayan sea salt or the gray salt. They have the most mineral content. And then we're gonna be using 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So that's very important. I choose the non-alcoholic one if you guys do want. And then finally, we have chocolate chips. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. These ones are gonna be Lily's. These ones are gonna be less sugar, so they're not gonna be sweetened with cane sugar, which I'm a big fan of. And also, they are really good quality. They are non-GMO, but they are not organic. So Lily's is gonna be our chocolate chip of choice today. And the things you're gonna need some measuring cups, measuring spoons. You are also going to need a bowl to mix these in, and then you're gonna have to freeze them as well for storage. And then we are gonna use a food processor. Yes, we finally have our food processor, so let's jump right into the recipe. And here we go, guys, with the trusty food processor. I love the food processor. It does amazing work, especially for a lot of our no-bake things. So we're jumping right in. We have our first and foremost, we are not taking our own advice and sprouting it this time because of time constraints, but guys, trust me, if you want to sprout the entire thing, that's the best way to do it, and then you can just store it in a mason jar. 1 cup of walnuts going right into the blender. And so we're gonna food process this first before we go onwards. One trick that I do recommend that you guys do check out is when you watch them go around, when you start seeing a little bit of buildup happening, that means that the oils are starting to separate in the nuts. So you need to make sure that you have to stop at that point. You don't want to over process these. It's very important not to do that. Okay, we have them food processed into small pieces. If you want them more fine, you can do so, but the purpose is really to just get them fine, and we're gonna have to add a little bit more in here as well because we need to put the dates in here, and we don't want full dates in our energy bites. That is not gonna be a fun taste when half of it is unsweet and half of it is sweet, extremely sweet, because dates do pack a punch. This is going to require a cup of medjool dates is my preference. Dropping it in there, and then we're just gonna start food processing it again. We wanna really make sure that all of the dates are intertwined into the nuts and they are not separate. And sometimes for this, you're gonna have to pulse it. And then you're just gonna wanna look at the consistency as you go. You wanna see what's going on with this dates. Is it kind of congealed into the recipe, or are they still separate? And you're definitely gonna wanna have it on high power if you're using a food processor, which is really kind of like the only way to do this as the most efficiently as possible. If you do choose to use a blender, it's just gonna be a lot more tedious. You're gonna have to take the top off and then push the ingredients down because it tends to build up on the side of the blender. This is gonna be the best way to make a lot of desserts. If you guys are really sticking with me and you're gonna be cooking a lot of these no-bake desserts, the food processor is an absolute must. We now have this finished. We now have this recipe all ready to go. So food processor part is done. Pretty super simple. Make sure that we get everything off of those blades. And now we are gonna bring out the bowl and we are gonna sub the food processor for the bowl. Everything came out right there, and now we have the mixture in the bowl, and we're gonna start adding in the other ingredients. Okay, so now that we have this done, I'm going to recommend that you add in two things here. If you want to do the coconut flakes, you can do so just to do it. I would probably fold those in, but if you're doing the oats, I would prefer to add those in afterwards, but we do have the salt. This is gonna be a pinch of sea salt, so I prefer probably about an 1/8 teaspoon or so. That's approximately a pinch to me. I know it's a little bit more, but I love the sea salt in there. I think it gives a really good balanced flavor. Salt and sweet is always very appealing to taste buds. And then we are gonna have a teaspoon of vanilla that we're gonna go ahead and add in. And then we have a tablespoon of coconut oil. Obviously, it's going to have to be melted in order for us to accomplish this. Go ahead and spread that around. In the recipe, it doesn't talk about doing this like this, but I prefer that we do have this mixture going on in there because it's gonna be a whole lot easier to mix it around in the food processor than it is to stir. Our stirring brings a lot more potential for error and getting clumps of salt and vanilla in certain areas and none in the other. And back to our wonderful food processor. There you go. I don't know, approximately 30 to 60 seconds. We don't wanna overkill this recipe at the same time. So now we're gonna switch it from the food processor into a bowl. All right, let's get the recipe right in there. Silicone spatulas are also great for making sure to get out any of this type of mixture in here if you do have any silicone spatulas. So this recipe does call for 3/4 cup of coconut flakes. If I was doing the coconut flakes, I would add it into the food processor and just pulse it slightly, but we're doing oats for mine. I think it kind of gives a little bit different of a flavor. So I'm gonna start with a 1/2 cup and then I'm gonna see how I like it. Because this is no bake, you can guys try it. So I would suggest starting a little bit under and going with that. So that is gonna be our oats right there. And then finally speaking, we're gonna be folding in the chocolate chips as well. So this recipe requires or calls for 3 tablespoons of chocolate chips. And once again, you guys can taste these. There is nothing wrong with tasting these. So we're gonna fold this together and then we're gonna try it out. All right, so using our hand here, folding everything together, and then we're gonna clump it into balls. And the balls are gonna allow it to be able to be the cookie dough bite-esque right here. So for me, using a little bit less of the oats was a win. Seems like it's a good balance. It seems like the chocolate chips are a good balance as well. And then when we do it, we just pick it up, we fold it into little balls. I would suggest grabbing a dish, putting a little bit of coconut oil on it, and then placing these evenly spaced out on the dish and then putting them in the freezer to go. So we obviously want to taste this right now. That's super good. Really, really good. I like that a lot. And then as it does freeze, it's gonna get them a lot more hard. Right now, obviously, you know, I've been using a food processor, which does heat up the food a little bit, so they're a little bit more mushy right now, but once you put them in the freezer, they're really gonna start congealing together and they're gonna be a great consistency. All right, guys, there you have it, the no-bake chocolate chip cookie dough bites that are delicious. This is gonna be a slam dunk. This is great for energy, great for if you're on the go and you need something great to snack on, but just remember they are frozen, so they are going to start to kind of thaw out over time. It's not gonna do anything bad to them. They're not gonna be as stuck together as if you did right off the bat. So, Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys being here. I'm excited to cook more delicious and nutritious recipes to change the world one bite at a time.